Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make Defected style tech house. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description, and if you're patient on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available, and let's dive in. Alright, so the first thing that's happening up here is you can see we have the bass line, which sounds like this. So you can see the bass line, it's like one bass line, but it's being played across two different sounds here. So the idea here is we have one to be kind of like these long held out notes. Just that same every single time. And then we have one that's just like for the more bouncy notes. And you can hear that one has a little bit more punch to it. So this is a great thing. I've talked about this a lot with these style of tech house tracks before, but it's like, you know, if you're going to have a really simple track where it's just all about the bass line and the kick and sort of how that is grooving with everything else, you have to do things to make the bass line a little bit more interesting, especially if it's just a one note bass line that literally just has like 4 notes that it plays throughout each bar. You know, you got to do something to make it a little bit more exciting, and so this is a great way to do it, you know, to have kind of like the contrast between this very like long and held out sound, and then this one, which is a lot more punchy. And then in terms of the actual notes, again, like you want to keep it really simple. Of course, it's just one note. You can have like 2 notes, but typically just kind of monophonic works really well. And then also just really not even using that many notes of the one note that we've chosen to use. So like I said, it only hits 4 notes inside of each bar here. Because what's going to happen is you have all this other percussion going on in the track, which I'm about to show you as well. And then you're going to have this just kind of coming through, creating a really, really simple groove that people can easily get into and dance along to. And that's how you kind of build up the groove. But it starts with a really simple bass. And then the sound on these is also really simple. You can see the notes that they're playing, it's just playing B. We're in the key of B minor. And so for the first bass, it's just this FM sound here where you can see we've got 2 sine waves. What makes this one interesting is the second sine wave is an octave down. So you're kind of getting that like deeper but still very fat sound. Like if I put it up to the same octave, it's fat but it's not as deep. But if you put it down, you get the same fatness but it's just a lot deeper. And yeah, then I just have a bit of drum bus to fatten that one up. You can see we've got a bit of boom on that, which helps to bring out the low end. And then we just have it being sidechained to the kick. And then the second bass is also really simple. So same concept here actually, where it's the 2 sine waves doing FM, and then the second one is an octave down. And then what makes this one different is the envelope. So you can see I have, this has got kind of a shorter volume envelope on oscillator B. And then I've also got the pitch envelope set like that. So it's just kind of making it a bit punchier. And a bit fluckier like you can hear. And then we just have some drum bus with some more boom on that. And then a compressor side chaining into the kick. And yeah, so that's the bass line. Again, it's going to be really simple. You know, you just want the simple tight groove. But there's actually a lot that goes into making a really simple bass line like that work really well. Then we have the kick. Which you can see the kick is actually completely dry here. So I wanted to show you guys this new technique that I've been trying here, where we don't actually do any saturation or compression or anything like that to the kick. And what it really means is like you have to start with a really strong sample. So this kick here is one that I've made just by layering together a few different samples that I've made in the past. And that's really what you want to do, is focus on just getting a really, really strong kick. You know, you can use this one, link is in the description, or any of my other ones. I try to really make all the samples like really fat and full sounding already, so you don't have to do that much to it, because really it's just about getting a really good kick and then letting that shine, rather than, you know, getting like a tiny kick and then trying to process it. It's a lot better to just make yourself a sample, or find a sample, or even sample something from a track that is already just really big and fat and punchy, and then it's just about leveling that out so that you can hear that coming through the mix, rather than like going and adding compression and saturation and all this extra stuff. And then on the group of the low end, I do just have a little tiny bit of actually nothing there. There's no effect on there. So yeah, you can see, kind of goes back to what I was saying with the kick. You know, there's no processing on the group here, but it's like we already have really fat basses and a really good kick, so we just kind of have to level them out, and that's all you really need. Then we have this bonus loop. So the idea behind this is something that's very popular in this style of music is using percussion loops. Like, it really gives you a lot of vibe and character in your tracks that you just can't really get from other sources. You know, like, I'll show you some, for example, like this pack in particular is really popular. And like, if I play some of these, like, check out, you'll see what I'm talking about. Hear how, like, these loops, you know, it's not just like a shaker, it's not just a hi-hat. There's so much going on there. You know, there's like a shaker, there's a hi-hat, there's a clap, there's bongos, there's a background percussion loop, there's atmosphere. And a lot of times when people grab these sample pack loops, I think it's because they just think that there isn't really like any way to create that otherwise. So what I've done here is I actually went through with a few of these loops and just listened to everything that's happening. And essentially, we're going to break down what's happening. So again, like, this whole group here, like, typically, this would just be, like, maybe you would bring in one of these percussion loops and put it underneath your track. But here I've gone and I've actually broken it down so you can see what's happening inside of these percussion loops that are being used so much in these tracks. Because, you know, it just is a really great way to add, like, that vibe to your track. If I turn this off, see, we still have the track there. But then when we turn it on, you know, it's like everything that's happening in there. So you can see right off the bat, you know, we have sort of like the most obvious stuff. Like, we have a snare, we have a shaker, we have like some other stuff as well. You can see these hi-hats. So that's something that's adding a lot of energy. The fact that we have our main hi-hat, but then we also have these ones, like, changing the sample every time. Again, it's really subtle, but those are the little things that are going to make a difference. We have these noises. Because a lot of times, a big part of what creates sort of like the vibe that you get from these sample loops is like the atmosphere in them. Like, if you listen to a lot of these, you can hear it there. They have like that mid-rangey kind of thing. You can hear it there. You know, like all this kind of stuff. And again, like, it just adds kind of like a nice background texture to it. So that's what that's doing. It's super quiet in there. And then we have these bongos and this tom sample. So you can hear we have a bit of call and response happening here, essentially. And that's the idea with these, is to create the call and response in this. Call and response is really important to these kinds of grooves. That's essentially what's going to create the groove and what's going to make it, like, really work. So we have the call and response between the bongos, where it's like, and then there's also just this little tom here just coming on some eighth notes just to add in. Yeah, it just adds a bit more groove and rhythm to it, so pretty simple stuff there. But yeah, so that's all that's going to go into one of these little percussion loops like you hear in a lot of these tracks. Like, if you listen, you've probably heard some of the ones that I played you from this sample pack over here in this video. You probably heard those in some tracks on Defected. Like, they're used a lot. But this is how you actually go in and make one of those. Like, you have to keep in mind, you know, this didn't just exist as, like, this magical loop that just appeared on Earth forever. Like, at some point, somebody sat there and made, like, the atmosphere, the two hi-hats, the shaker, the bongos, and then you just hear it in this percussion loop that's in a sample pack that's then probably been processed even more. But this is really, like, the start of it, and this is how you actually go through and make the layers by hand. And then all that's just going through a bit of drum bus and a bit of a high pass filter. So pretty simple stuff. We don't want it to be too crunchy, but the drum bus does really help to kind of give this all an even texture. That's kind of the last step to this. Is like, it's one thing to put all the layers together, But then also, you obviously have to make it sound like it's actually one loop, like they're kind of all from the same place. So this drum bus is really good for that. And then the EQ8 here just cuts out the low end. Make sure it's not going to get in the way of anything else. Then we have the shaker. So just kind of like a nice shaker. The thing about this one is you can hear it's not too like sharp. It's just a nice softer shaker. We don't even have any processing on it. It's just in there. Kind of filling in the background. Then we have our main hi-hat, which you can see actually also doesn't have any processing on it. So again, I'm really trying to show you guys how to do this in a cleaner way here. Because if we do all that saturation on these hi-hats, you could get them fatter sounding, but ultimately, if you just start with a really strong sample, this is just a really full sounding hi-hat. We don't need all that saturation because it's already sounding really good. We just get it. It's kind of like with the kick. It's like we just get it to a level in the mix where it comes through and it's powerful. And then that's pretty much what we need. And then we have the ride, which you can see, it's just kind of in there in the background a little bit. It's really meant to be a layer to that main hi-hat. And you can hear it just kind of helps to fill out the frequency spectrum more because we don't really have, without the ride, there's not really anything that's just in that, really bright high-end range. So when we turn that on, it just fills it out. And then also, it's an arrangement thing because you could have, the first half of your drop is, just this. And then when that ride comes in, it's like, hey! But yeah, so we got that going through a little bit of a high-pass filter here. And then I also have this echo on here, which you can see it's really, really fast, and then it's on the ping pong setting. And I've also set the filter so that it's pretty much not doing anything. And yeah, this is just meant to add that stereo width to the ride. Something that's important with these, because it's such a high sound, is to have a bit of stereo width, because if you don't, it's just going to kind of blend in. If I turn this off, it doesn't really stand out in its own place as much, but when you turn on the echo, it's kind of puts it in its own place. So that's the purpose of that. And then we have the clap. And again, this doesn't have any processing, just a nice, powerful clap, just letting it sit there right on top of the mix. And this is a sample that I made, and this was something I had already done a nice amount of saturation to. Had some layers, so you can see how useful it is though to make your own sounds and then go and make tracks rather than trying to do it all at once. Because it's when I'm doing this, I can just go and grab this kick that I made, grab this clap that I made. It's so much faster than if I had to make each of those from scratch right in the project file. And yeah, then down here we have this piano stab. So yeah, you can hear, it's just a nice ravey stab. The thing about it is that it's very sparse with the notes. It just goes dun 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 dun. And that's because it's all about how this is grooving with the other elements, where you notice none of these three things play at the same time. It's always one stops and then the other plays. So that's the thing about this piano stab, is that it's really about how it's fitting into this groove of these three elements. And that's why it's so simple on its own, but it works really well. And that's just going through a bit of reverb, some drum bus to make it a bit fatter. I have a compressor side chaining it to the kick, a high pass filter, and then this EQ8 just gives it a little extra kind of boost of really just some high end and mid range, but it's just making it a bit more sharp and kind of more modern sounding. Here's without it. And then with it, you can hear what I mean. It just kind of gives it the HD filter to make it feel just a little bit less muddy and a lot more like it fits into the mix. And yeah, then we have these little vocal stabs, which you can hear. These are really simple. So again, it's just about how these are in this groove. It's woo! And then this sound. just a little vocal stab. But again, like that groove between the piano stab and the two vocals is really solid. And then if I start bringing in like the bass, you know, like if you can't solo your bass line and then like these elements and get that groove and already like be able to count out the track and like, yeah, you need to make sure like this stuff is working on that level even. Like it needs to just be a tight groove no matter how many elements you hear. But then of course when you bring in everything, that's what's gonna make the track. And then the last thing down here is we just have a bit of, well, we have this crash. And then this little white noise build. You can see it's just some noise. Got the bandpass filter and then reverb, auto pan, high pass. But yeah, so this is just something that I want to highlight, which is like in this style of house, typically you're actually going to use a pretty good amount of effects. Like in a lot of other styles of tech house is more minimal and you're not going to have like, you know, a huge crash and white noise every 8 bars or every 16 bars. In this style of track, I actually would say like every 8 to 16 bars, you want to have some kind of effect just to kind of keep it like that energy of like kind of constantly pushing and pulling with the tension. And you can even like take out the kick here. But yeah, just making sure you have those, because again, it's going to add some life to your track that you won't get if you don't have the right amount of effects. And yeah. So yeah, that is going to be it for this one. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much to everybody who picks this up. It really helps to support me and keep me going so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every day. And yeah, thanks guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.